you chaotic gremlins. I'm Alex the Chaos Wolf, or Alex if you're feeling particularly friendly. And today we're going to be playing and reviewing Farlanders. Farlanders is an indie-based Farlanders is an indie turn-based strategy, city builder, and colony simulation game that is available now on Steam. Now, I have played this game multiple times, attempting to record this same video over and over and over. I have removed the previous play slots because I just didn't want them taking up space, and I don't like being faced with the memories of my failures. But each time I tried recording, something was always going wrong with the recording software. It had nothing to do with the game. It was always something else on my end in that regard. But that being said, I don't want to play through the campaign again. And as we start going through free play, I'll explain why I don't want to go through the campaign again. And I'll give you some reviews as to things about the mechanics and stuff like that. I'd also like to let everybody know that I did receive this game for free. It was provided through the Strategy Informer, who has made this video possible today. They reached out to the developer and publisher and got the key for me, so I could then play and review the game for them. If you want more information about the game and the Strategy Informer themselves, all of that information is down in the description below. And so let's go ahead and get into this. So we're going to start fresh here. And we're going to go with the first metropolis on Mars. And we're just going to start with like a random seed and everything like that. We're just going to leave everything like base game. One of the reasons why I did not really enjoy going through the campaign is that the campaign seems to be very handholdy in regards to its tutorial, whereas its tutorial from my perspective seemed to stretch over multiple chapters. I played up through chapter 3 and that just didn't really want to continue because it just seemed to be a little too handholdy in regards to the mechanics of the game, rather than conveying any story elements that they had provided. That's a pet peeve of mine. I'm not going to really count that as part of the review. Some people might find that more beneficial in their regard. I'm only going to review the game based off its mechanics, its usability, and its appearance as well. As you can see, it's very like 2D, so it sort of like provides this retro vibe, kind of similar to like games from RPG Maker, or utilizing like the similar styles of old like 2D RPG games, or just the retro 2D games. It's definitely a style that I particularly like. One of the things that I do like is that you can click on each of these tiles and get descriptions of what they are, which is fairly useful. The UI does kind of seem very mobile-ish in regards to its design, but it also carries over things from like other similar like turn-based strategy, civilization building games and stuff like that, such as Sid Meier's Civilization. I think StarCraft is one of them. I might be wrong. I haven't really played that one. But its UI is kind of a mixture of what you would expect to be in a turn-based strategy, city or civilization builder, as well as kind of like a sort of like mobile, as the icons are a little bit more enhanced than what you would expect to find on PC. I don't know if this was actually constructed for mobile and ported to PC, or if it was constructed specifically for PC. But yeah, so let's get into this. So we want to put, like with any strategy game, you always want to put your base near to early resources that you're going to need to access relatively early on. And so one of these things is that the tutorial will explain is that you need this habitat ship first. You need these mineral deposits. You're going to need to have access to water and agricultural plots through water. And there's water all over the place. Some of it's frozen, some of it's not. But this seems to be like the more ideal place to start in this regard. Which every playthrough that I've done through in like free play, because I also tried like recording free play multiple times, every playthrough that I did usually has at least an ideal starting spot. It does seem to be somewhat randomly generated, but there usually does seem to be a spot to where you can have access to all of the early starting resources that you need, which is very important in a game like this to help ensure success. So we're going to start out with gaining a population. I'm just going to hook those directly up to the building there. I don't think I have to actually do anything beyond that regard. I've never actually tested that. We'll go ahead and put this here. We're going to need some production. And yeah, it's going to tell us there's a worker shortage because we don't have people here yet, which is to be expected because we just started. And then as for power, well, we only really start out with wind power. We'll go ahead and add that there now. We can go ahead and add an additional water source if we so choose. Right there, not a bad option. But then I also do realize that I have then cut off one of my access points to this here geothermal vent. So that's my fault. That has nothing to do with the game. Got our factory going, which is going to provide us some nice resources. The progression seems to be fairly normal in my previous playthroughs. You seem to progress each time you get you reach the next milestone in population, which is expected. So, and it seems to count in the tens, not fives or anything like that. So the next time that we get 20, I think is when we're going to receive our next upgrade. And we get access to things like energy conservation, water extraction, scouting. Obviously, energy conservation and water extraction are going to be more important for me in this regard. And I feel like that they kind of emphasize this because even though the tree is moved out a little bit, these are held slightly higher than everything else on the list. This appears first, but this sort of catches your eye with it being more elevated than everything else. And I feel like that's the game's way of emphasizing how important those can be to success, whereas everything else, while important, is not exactly a base necessity in that regard. So now that we have access to those, we have a couple of different things that we can do. We want to make sure that we can support a population that is more than 10. Right now, the game starts you out with all of the resources needed to support a population of 10. But once you get beyond that point, well, you get beyond that point. It also takes into account shadow as a detriment for certain buildings, which I haven't really seen a lot in other games. Personally, so that was something that was actually rather interesting to me in that regard. And I know I'm talking relatively quickly and anything like that. I want to do the game justice, but I also I do want to get this recorded and out so everybody can hear it in the review. All right, so in that regards, I think I've done everything that I needed for water right now. I don't really need to add an additional population just yet. I do want to see what terraforming options pop up here, which is a good thing that I did because I can utilize this to sort of break that down. I can't utilize this just yet, but getting this prepared is going to definitely help me in the future. Now I can go ahead and either add an additional population or I can focus on other things. Now, how this game actually handles this is that if I add an additional population, I then have a surplus of people, which has its pros and cons. Obviously, a surplus of people means that I'm not generating enough resources or enough power in order to support that population. But at the same time, if I am building to meet a new population, and my building then extends beyond my population, what the game does, and I've noticed that it does it, and I'm going to see if I can get it to show it, is it will prioritize things like food. We'll see if we get it to do it. Over things like factory production. which, kind of, if you think about it, makes, perfect sense. And like, food is definitely more important than like factory production. But it will then prioritize everything else over factory production, which limits my resources, which limits my ability to continue growing. So in that regard, that's kind of a bit of a problem for me. So when you expand, typically speaking, how this game seems to want you to handle it is you expand first, and then you build infrastructure out to support that expansion. So now we are short of workers, but we have a surplus of resources. It's a little bit of a management hurdle here that you have to go through. In a lot of cases, in a lot of other games, typically, building out more, allowing for population to then grow into what you build is typically what is considered ideal, but this doesn't treat it that way. I can't use it like that, but I can use this. Okay. So there. All right. So we are at a power deficit. We have to keep that in mind almost constantly. Now, how the power works is it's fairly simple. Like, so what we can do is we can run the greenhouse at half power. Okay, that helps cut down our power consumption, and you can do this with like most of the buildings as well. So that's not that big of a deal. And I'm just going to be randomly like putting things down because you can also just connect these buildings. All right, so we don't need to accept any more people. Obviously, like our concern is power consumption at the moment, and the fact that we do have like a worker shortage is unfortunately a detriment to us. That's a risk that I chose to take because I wanted to show off this particular thing here. So we got the factory production, but it will prioritize this over everything else. And that means that includes electricity, that includes workers, that includes everything. Food will always be prioritized over your production. Which I think is a rather logical leap in that regard. So if I put this here, it should not, it does not negatively affect my, it doesn't negatively affect my solar panel. So windmills get an advantage by being in mountainous areas, so it's getting an advantage from 3 different mountains on all sides of it. I think that's the maximum that you're going to be able to get, whereas you have solar panels over here, which gain more advantage by being connected to each other. Okay. So power is a big thing right now. We want to make sure that we have that power available in that regard, in regards to what we're working on. Otherwise, without that power accessibility, we can run into problems that like reduce, our production capabilities, reduce our ability to create food. We can go ahead and bring these back up to full capacity. When we do that, we get a worker shortage. So we're going to reduce one of them because we still have a surplus of food. But what we're now suffering from is a loss in terms of water. So we're going to fix that, and they provide you a lot of like interesting stuff like relatively early on. So we have that water pump there, which does need the fancier pipes connect to the base. We don't have enough resources for that. One of the other things that this provides you is the ability to like, you're not always going to be able to use these. Maybe you don't have the need to access further than now, or you don't want to try and expanding now, or maybe this isn't useful to you just this moment, but it could be useful later down the road. You can go ahead and save these. You also have the ability to recycle them for other resources that can be utilized in other tools and research later on, which is definitely something that I think is fairly useful. Rather than treating it as a loss, you just get to basically hold it or recycle it. We connect that to the base. This also does require an electrical connection, and we can just connect it there. There we go. Now we're providing plenty of water for everything that we utilize, and we can now continue expanding our habitats. Well, we would be able to expand our habitats if we had enough resources to do so. We do not currently have enough resources to do so. This game shares a lot in regards to dealing with destruction, repair, and just basically terraforming. You can tear down these mountains. You can build mountains. So if I wanted to build a wind farm, I could definitely build a wind farm with the best benefits possible by building mountains around a wind farm. I personally enjoy solar a little bit more, but it is an option, a viable option for you to utilize if you want to do that. We're going to go ahead and go with a couple more houses, and they're not going to be happy because they're going to be right next to that factory, which isn't something that's necessarily important right this moment. It's not up here, which is where it's going to show yet. That's going to be something that just gets a little bit more important later on. So we've reached, it actually gets important here. So we've reached a point to where we can go trading, colony, morale, loans, more science, electronics, and food given as gifts to us. So we have all those. We've reached the next population milestone. Now we can see what's causing colony morale to go down a little bit, and we need to kind of focus on resolving them. The best way to do that so far is to research like efficient housing, which is, in my opinion, a little bit better anyway. You get the ability to basically craft this community center right here. And the community center, basically, when you have the community center, you can also like move these things to where you need them to be. So, you know, if you've got your housing all up here, you want to just cover all of your housing around it, and you do that, you can do that, which is definitely something that I personally enjoy. The ability to basically decide where there's going to be the need for that. And then you get the housing here, which gives you +5 production. It's a little bit more efficient. We can already benefit from this here and increase our population from 30 to 42, so it gets a little bit of a buff as well. But when we do that, we're also going to need to increase our food supply as well. That's pretty important, actually. We might actually end up having to increase our power. So we're going to do this here. So we currently have enough food to support what we have here, but we're about to get 10 more people. So we want to expand upon this. And these buildings just connect to each other. So we're back down to like a shortage of workers, and these buildings just connect to each other. So we don't have to worry about like going in and wiring each and everything to fit what we need it to fit. They all really just sort of work together in that regard. Another thing that we have here is we can go ahead and clear that a little bit. Some of the tool icons for terraforming will affect the environment in ways that you don't want them to affect. Some of them just won't work with whatever slot that they typically fall on. Fire typically just melts the ice or anything like that, and it doesn't seem to like affect anything else at all. So that's something that I rather enjoy myself. And then we got here an even better situation is that we can just go down here and we can create even more water that we might need for more food later on down the road. We can also create a trading station if we really wanted to. We can't really research anymore at the moment because we need to sort of hit that next milestone. get our research up, which is absolutely fine. We're going to go a few turns forward. But this is like basically what the game is so far. It's just, it is your very standard civilization builder. So it is what you would expect it to be. In this regard, I don't really need these. I don't see a reason why I would want to use some of those right now. And some of the tiles, that those are like fairly useless. So, you know, the fact that you could just like recycle them and get something useful out of them later down the road is something that I actually like a lot. This, not so much useless because we kind of need access to this particular resource up here. In a glass refinery. And where you build your factories and stuff, it does matter. Like it will show you if where you're building is going to be detrimental to, you know, your environment. They, obviously homes don't want to be built around factories and stuff like that. It's just not very enjoyable for them. But like, this is the gist of the game. I mean, this is typically like how far I've gotten in each of my recordings. If you want to see more, I can definitely do more. Let's see if we can't get a little bit further. I'm going to take advantage of that to make sure that we have power. Because I don't want to like extend solar out this way. I have other plans for out here. Especially now that I can get like, up to there relatively easier. But water is definitely going to be another major concern. One of the things that we should probably add is power capacitors, which allow us to store, you know, additional power. Okay. We should do the same thing technically with water. Water tanks to be able to store additional water. That way, if we end up growing into a deficit, we don't have to worry too much about losing power too quickly, because it will basically be able to recover it. It gives us a little bit more of a time here. Let's see. I don't really have the ability to expand much further at this point in terms of population without putting things at serious risk. We need more water. So I'm going to connect. These two pumps, which increases our water collection by quite a bit, actually. And then we continue forward with this. It's a constant battle between maintaining resources and stuff that you need. What did I have saved in here? So I have these. So this can be useful to, like, if you need space, you can just like fill in the space here. Now, obviously, we have a bunch of stuff that we don't need there. But we can sort of help like clean this out a little bit. And actually, we can do things like this, which allows us to put more stable buildings on here for additional water production. But we are going to need to do more water production. Food is currently fine at the moment. But we do need more water production, so we're going to put this here. It is unfortunately going to end up getting rid of that. Once we get it connected. So you can't have like a water pump and then fertile ground around it. It's not going to work that way. So placement of these water resources is very, very important to keep up on, because like you can just easily run out of resources that you need, or ruin, you know, your ability to get further resources that you need by like doing this. But I also have another one up here that I can easily access once I get the right stuff. And, you know, there's no penalty for waiting to expand. You can just sort of expand and plan at your own pace, which is definitely something I would recommend in any type of strategy game, in all perfect honesty. So like here we can do this, and then the next time we get, you know, shovels, we can start clearing this out and making plantable soil, fertile soil, which we can actually start doing now. In this regard, that clears out quite a few tiles for us. That helps. Now, I don't see anything in regards to like food storage personally, which it might be over here. Ground hydrate. Yeah, food silo over here would be what you would increase your food storage. And it has everything. Like, it explains what everything does. Geothermal vent for geothermal power. So I don't know why the tutorial was as hand-holdy as it was, which again might just be a pet peeve of mine, and not necessarily something actually like wrong with the game or anything in that regard. It was just something I didn't personally enjoy. I am not really counting it as much. Oh yeah, we can have a glass depot and we can have mineral deposits to increase our mineral deposit loads and stuff like that. But we want to make sure that we have the food supply to increase our population. Again, so we need agriculture. Now that we have the surplus in water, that's a little bit easier for us to do. Placing those there now for the future, because I can't really like run anything over it. I have to clear out this section too. And I just did not have the resources for that at the time. So I'm hoping I get another shovel, which I do. And it allows me to create another fertile plot. And so if I go here, I can connect those. Okay. And I could have just connected those the way that I did. Oh. Yeah. I typically waste a little bit of resources sometimes. Okay, so now that we've done that, we have another worker shortage. We need more workers. So we need to spend resources to get a higher population. We can't put those there. We can put these there, though, which increases our population. We can get 5, which should put everything back into working order. Almost everything back into working order. But hey, maybe we will get more luxury. Maybe we'll get a shovel and we can do more luxury housing. We can. We can. We're going to turn this around, though. There we go. Then we can do more, well, efficient housing, I should say. Which gets bonuses from being next to each other. Actually, I don't think I want that right there. So we're going to go here. And we're going to probably need more power once these come into place. Extra 10. And that's really the game in a nutshell. Now, I haven't encountered anything that's particularly dangerous, like enemies or anything, thus far. I only went like up to chapter 3, through chapter 3 in the campaign, um, and that's really just more of a pet peeve of mine. Um, if I feel like a game is being too handholdy, I'm not going to have as much fun. And it has some story elements on it, like Marco in the campaign is who you are, and you're working for Foresight, the company that is colonizing Mars. Um, I'm not going to give too much details on that, but let's get into what I think would make the game maybe a little bit better in regards to its campaign. Um, now, I feel like they could give you the basics of the tutorial all in chapter 1, covering accessing water, food, and the other basic necessities like minerals, glass, and the tech tree expansion. And then the rest of the chapters can be dedicated to continuing whatever small story that they have been, trying to develop on. One of my other pet peeves is that the majority of that story is encapsulated in the beginning, like before you start a chapter, and then things following the chapter. So you get the story before, you play through whatever the goals are, and then you can sort of like do a review. And I don't think that's entirely a bad idea, but I feel like it would serve the game a little bit better if snippets of the story would follow throughout the play session of each chapter, rather than it all being condensed to the first and last part, the first and the beginning and end of that particular chapter, so the before and after. Um, Maybe work in the tutorial a little bit better into the story element. They try to do that in sort of like an orientation and training um, um, program, but for me, that just sort of like falls a little flat in that regards. Again, very, very hand-holdy, um, rather than allowing you to sort of like research and find things out on your own, which I think is rather important, that you be able to do things on your own, rather than have the game tell you exactly what to do every other time. Um, Aside from like a couple of other things, um, um, all in all, I feel like it just could be improved in that regard. Um, Now, there aren't many chapters available. It looked like there was a maximum of 8 chapters available. And I am going to end up playing like throughout the entirety of the campaign at some point, just to see what more the game has to offer beyond that. But for an RTS, and like in my opinion, this type of game, in my uh, opinion, my enjoyment more comes from it in regards to, like the freestyle play, just the ability to get let loose and build up the environment the way that I want to, um, meeting the goals, you know, yeah, and my method, and basically just designing things myself, in that regards. The first 2 chapters of the tutorial, like they teach you how to like grow minerals. Um, I'm not sure if that's just a rare thing that pops up every now and then, or if that was only for the campaign. And you have to go to a specific spot for it, which makes sense. But in other parts, they're like telling you how to create water, but they're making you go to a specific spot that is too far out of your reach. Which, again, that particularly doesn't make sense. It's trying to force you, hey, that you create water here, rather than this is a tool to create water. Plop it down where you think it is best for you. In that regard. Um, if I had to give an honest rating for the game, I enjoy the mechanics, I enjoy the art style, I enjoy the music. It sets a great ambiance and stuff like that. I would have to rate the campaign, from what I've played so far, to separately from the free play of the game. Um, I did not enjoy the campaign very much, and I know I've already said that, and I've given my reasons why, and freestyle was a lot more enjoyable for me because it just basically let me figure things out on my own. Um, but I'm not going to rate them separately. I'm just going to rate the game as a whole. Um, so my rating for the game would typically, I'd probably put it around a 7 to 8 out of 10, which is very good. Like, it's a game that I definitely want to play again, and a game that I intend to play in my own free time. So if this is a game style that you like, if you like RTS, builders, and colony simulators, I think this would be a great addition to your library. Are there games that probably do it better? Yes, but those games also have a bigger budget. um, for an indie game, this actually hits, it scratches those itches for developing a civilization, going through a research tree, designing, a city or a planet to your specifications, and you can do it in completely different environments. They offer 3 different environments through free play that you can go through. So there are like quite a few options there. Um, but I would definitely give the game a try. It's really good. You check it out on Steam. Link is down in the description, and definitely check out the Strategy Informer as well. They give honest reviews on different indie strategy games on their website. Multiple creators do work with them, providing videos on their YouTube channel, their articles on their site, and all that there. And they also have a Discord, which is linked down below as well. If you're a content creator or just interested in strategy games in general, you can definitely find it out there. And I will see everybody next time.